So thank you very much, Chris. This is being recorded to the clouds. It's part 2, week 5. We had breakout groups, so there's a little bit happening along the way. But I'll go through 20. You missed my, I guess we forgot to record my, for those of you who aren't here tonight, I went through Dr. Cecil Smith's article on advice for new faculty members, and I'm sorry we didn't record that, so you missed about 20 minutes. I feel bad, but well, it's in this handout on writing and publishing tips and so forth. So, oops, oops. Okay, let me try this again. Nope, that's not what I want to share. Let me try this again. There we go. There we go. Okay, let me hide my video pane. Whoops. Whoops. Come on. I'm trying to hide my video on this silly little laptop. It's really difficult sometimes to do. Here we go. Scroll over. More. Hide video panel. Thank you. Okay. It's tricky. Okay. Caveat. These 20 methods are not all going to be doable or viable for you because your university might not allow it. Now, I'm not saying these are totally sneaky ways or unethical or immoral or whatever. It's just some universities have standard things that they like to have for a dissertation. So they might not like idea number 1, 2, or 3. Number 1 is to use existing data that a center or institute or some other entity or organization has collected and has sitting there, but hasn't analyzed yet. It's just, it could have been there for decades. It could have been there for months. It could have been there for weeks or for days. But someone else has led the charge in collection of the data. You're just analyzing the data. Now, some of my faculty colleagues believe that you should be the one collecting as well as analyzing the data for a dissertation. I do not think that's totally true. I think all you have to do is analyze, summarize, and write about your findings and implications. I don't think you have to actually be the one who's collected that data. But I'll just point out that this is a way that many students get their dissertations done. They're looking at existing data sets somewhere, like at Indiana, we have the National Survey of Student Engagement. Okay, you heard me. The National Survey of Student Engagement. Has anyone heard of that?
I have not.
Okay, and you should have, because have you ever been to Scotland?
No.
Okay, well, if you've been to Scotland, you would have heard of the Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. Well, the National Survey of Student Engagement is NSSE, called the Nessie. The High School Survey of Student Engagement is the HESI, HSSE. They have the community care and they have the community college study of student engagement, survey and student engagement. They have all these things. So this is decades long. And a former professor colleague of mine named George Koo, who's the most published person in all of Indiana University School of Ed for the last 5 decades, probably the most published person, is George Koo, in part because of this engagement questionnaire that is built, that's used internationally to compare universities. Now, Ivy League like Cornell and Princeton, they don't use this because they don't want you to know that Princeton's no better than Indiana in terms of student engagement. In fact, might be worse. They don't want to know that data. They don't want it to get out because they want to be pristine. They want to be the top tier and all that kind of stuff. Anyhow, some of you might find that is a way in which you make your input. The second is to use existing data from your advisor that he or she has already collected as part of a major research project, and it's just sitting there, and you say, oh, Dr. Dr. Lee, Dr. Kim, I want to use this data that you've collected. It sounds really good. You're not analyzing it. I noticed that it exists. I would like to, have a crack at it. Is it okay? Now, again, some faculty feel as though you should be the one collecting that data. So find out the parameters in your institution or on in your department. I think this is, in most places, would be very legitimate to use a data set that's been collected, provided you're passionate about it, provide you're interested in it. Number 3, use existing government data. And there are many students, in fact, sometimes you're able to use existing government data and go beyond it. I had one student study K-12 online learning data the government had collected, but then actually extended beyond it with a survey of students in K-12 settings to get at I think it was engagement of the online learning environments. So there it's a both and. I have some students one of my students looked at what they call that, bring your own device, BYOD, in Indiana. And the state of Indiana gave him existing data across all the school systems in Indiana. They also provided him with a couple of school districts that were doing innovative things. And so he had this existing statewide data, and then he went beyond it and interviewed leaders at least one, maybe both. And he'll be my guest next week in my other class. I'll try and bring him in. His name is Remzi. He's originally from Turkey. And Remzi studied those schools, in the Lebanon School District near Indianapolis. It might have been someplace else. And he actually went up into the schools and did some interviewing of the administrators there. I don't think he interviewed students, but he might have. Maybe he did. And when you interview students, K-12 students, there's more that you have to go through. So existing data, the first 3. Number 4, conduct your own pilot study. There are a number of students today that I find that get insights into the dissertation that they could be doing by doing a small pilot study of 3 or 4 students, interviews, or having a small scale survey before you do a big one, to have that initial understanding of what it looks like. So you might refashion your survey questions. You might revise or refine your interview questions by having that pilot study early on that leads to. Some do a master's thesis before doing a dissertation that leads to. So step by step. Well, I have 2 number 4, so I actually have 18 ideas. Use computer log data and system generated data. Now, I had computer log data, I think, in my dissertation. We recorded keystrokes for all the students writing. Typically, your faculty members will not approve a dissertation that just has computer log data. However, there are exceptions to the rule, and computer log data can get you started to figure out what questions you might be asking in focus groups, in follow-up interviews, in retrospective analyses, in online reflections or whatnot. Computer log data, in some cases, is the only data, and I'll come back to that possibility. Some students, and maybe number 5 is really not a good example, but early in my career, I've tried creating instruments and validating them. I created a metacognitive instrument for writing, a index of writing awareness. I tried creating an attitude questionnaire for K-12 students on 21st century learning skills. I tried creating a constructivism scale called the scale, social constructivism in active learning environments. So in validating a scale and creating a scale can be a dissertation, but it's not easy to validate a measure, any measure. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of time, and there'll be frustrations along the way. And I actually wouldn't recommend creating a new scale. I recommend refining someone else's, modifying someone else's scale. So if you're doing a dissertation, I shouldn't say don't, try not to develop your own scale. If you want to get done, try to utilize someone else's with minor modifications. Then when you put their instrument in the appendices, you say adapted and modified by adapted and modified Bonk 2013 research, or whoever research it is, rather than developing your own. And you're going to have a committee members who are going to be really on your case about how valid is that instrument and your population and so forth. In psychology, many of the Big Ten universities, large universities like University of Houston, where Karen is, will have a respondent pool where they'll take an undergraduate class, and as part of the requirements of the undergraduate class, they have to participate in research. So often you can collect data by utilizing that pool of participants. Now, I had my memory study early on. We were using an existing ed psych class, or maybe it was psych, having students repeatedly reading the same passage over and over again, looking at forgetfulness. Well, I had talked about this yesterday, not today. So we had them repeatedly reading and we had students who read straightforward stories, mixed stories, make a story, and all this stuff. Anyways, we had students in a subject pool. And so that is a fairly common way, but I was going to say the subject pools. I'll have to come back to there's more to think about here in terms of the possible. Oh, military. When I dealt with the military, they always have a subject pool available for you if you need it. They don't let them get paid that week or that month unless they participate in the research. They're not going to be wandering off. Their drill sergeants will make sure that they fill out all the questions until they're allowed to leave anyhow. What's it called? That's called a caveat. So a captive audience as opposed to a subject pool. Similar kind of thing. Number 7 is you can pick up your phone or send an email to somebody and ask them for advice. Just contact the leaders in the field or somebody who knows. If you read an article from someone and they've got a data pool that's similar to what you want, write to them, send them a note, go to visit them at a conference, or paste your study into social media, like in Facebook. I've had many Facebook related studies where the link exists in Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, it could be, or Facebook, LinkedIn, all these. And you can often get enough people participating because of the social media like WeChat or Kakao Talk in Korea or Line in Taiwan. Paste the link into your survey, paste the link into your whatever, your website, post the information in a MOOC. MOOCs have tens of thousands of people taking them. If you can befriend with a MOOC instructor, we've had a couple occasions where the MOOC instructor posts a link in to the MOOC. And we got one study, I don't think we ever analyzed it. We were supposed to stop the study maybe 3 years ago. We're still getting 2 respondents a day. I mean, we probably have thousands of respondents that we've never analyzed because it's been, these are MOOCs that repeat over and over and over again. And then another way is just go out and collect the data. If you need the data, well, you need interviews, interview people, survey people, do focus groups, figure out a way to collect data through observations, through questions, blah, blah, blah. And we have number 10. So really we're at number 19 here. Make an announcement. Make an announcement at a conference, make an announcement during a class, make an announcement during a summit, make an announcement within a publication somewhere that you're doing this research. Make an announcement at a department meeting, make an announcement, just you name it, at a symposium at the end. Oh, it was really nice. Everybody could come to my keynote. By the way, if you'd like to be part of this research, you can click on www.bonk.com and take this survey. You can get a whole dissertation going just by making an announcement or having a link embedded in a MOOC, or all these ways work. I mean, I've tried all these things. And you can ask your friends for advice. Just chat with them. Well, where do you think I should go to get, students who took a MOOC to take my survey? I asked that question of a friend, and he told me how he got his students to take his survey. Well, that's great, George. It's a great idea. So ask your friends or ask people who are publishing articles related to your research. Just ask them. That's probably the easiest, friendliest, least risk entail, just send an email. That's the, you'll save yourself a lot of frustration and tension. Now, if you send people, it don't have to be your friends, can be casual, acquaintances. If you send these people your email and all of them say, I don't know, well, then you got to keep digging. And that happens. It does happen where people I write to, oh, geez, I really don't know how we're going to get that person to fill it out. I just don't know. I don't know how we got our sample. It's magic. There's never just magic. Contact fellow researchers. You have friends, fellow researchers. You're at a symposium with other people. Contact them after the symposium with an email. Just follow up with those people. Or before, even better, before the symposium. If you're on a symposium or you plan to attend ACT or AERA or some other conference or a TESOL or whatever you're going to, before the conference, look at the program and go through and say, oh, these people are doing research related to my field. I think probably the number one thing people don't do when they do their dissertations is just that. Let me repeat that. The most important thing you can do, literally the most important thing you can do, is contact other people in the field, because they are the lifeblood for your future. And they are the connections to your next connections. They are the budding job possibilities. They are the people who might ask you to write a book chapter. They are the people who will influence what your implications are in your dissertation. They will tell you what's going on for future. They will tell you the future directions. So I really recommend, like AERA, there's 15,000 people, there are thousands of talks. You can go through any AERA program and find at least 5 people that are doing something similar to you. Now, it won't be the exact same thing, but it'll be similar to you. And it's going to be worth your time to circle those, write to those people, and tell them, this is what I'm doing for my research. This is what I'm thinking about doing for my research. What do you think about that? And I wrote to one guy at Michigan, he's a famous guy. He created the index of reading awareness. So I created the index of writing awareness. He was an alum of IU Bloomington in the psych department. His name is Scott Paris. And Scott Paris told me, you're too ambitious with that dissertation. You're not going to change the critical, or was that my master's thesis? Maybe it was my master's thesis. And I was trying to change the critical and creative thinking skills of students in a computer camp, in a 3-week computer camp. He says, they're not going to change in a 3-week computer camp. And he was right. My advisors didn't tell me that, but he was right. And I should have listened to Scott Paris. Now, my advisors were really supportive, and they knew a lot, and a whole lot more than I did. But often that extra person that you reach out to can tell you a lot. And because they're not constrained by being on your dissertation, they're not constrained by signing a form. They can be honest and genuine with you. Now, you have to be nice when you contact people. You have to start with a humble apology of their time. Thank you for their time. To end with a huge thank you. Maybe you send them a box of chocolates when it's done, or send them a card. But, that's where the power happens in dissertations. It comes from other people that are connected. And in those connections, learning occurs in the connections outside the skin, not inside your brain. Learning happens outside in those connectedness, right? And so that's why you want to reach out. And you never know. I reached out to my friend George Valencianos on Vancouver Island. I said, George, we're doing a study of MOOC instructors. We're collecting names. He says, oh, Curt, this is a really great idea to collect email names of MOOC instructors. I wanted to do that too. In fact, I collected 700 names and emails and disciplines, and I've never done a study. And here, you can have them. You can have them. He gave me 700 names. It took him weeks to collect. He just gave them to me because I reached out. And then from that, my team, we added to it. Over 3 summers, we now have 3,000 names in there. We did a dozen studies. If I hadn't reached out to him, we wouldn't have done one single study, because we would have had to work really hard. and he saved us a lot of time. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Sume, what do you think of these tips so far?
That's great. I like it. Actually, that's because sometimes it's really hard to where I can get data. That's a really great idea. Especially
Yeah.
social media. I never thought about that, but sometimes I saw just one question, under LinkedIn. And then sometimes I just click, but that's really great idea. Anyway, just they can collect a lot of data from, somebody anonymously. So that's great idea.
And you can also collect data within LinkedIn. We did a study looking at job postings. It's already in
Right.
LinkedIn, just collecting the data, scraping. So I'm going to come back to that. So
Right.
looking for fellow researchers. So I did a study of YouTube back in the early days of YouTube with two faculty or two researchers at University of Houston, where Karen is, Grace Lynn, who was a student there, and I forget the other woman who was there doing research. We never published it. We presented it at the ERA. We made a big mistake in our publishing because we looked at what videos in YouTube are motivational. It was a great study, and we created a Facebook group. We were having problems people taking our survey, and when you clicked on the survey, it brought you to YouTube videos, and you watch them, and then you'd fill them out, look at for motivational aspects, instructional design aspects. It was really a slick study. It was like embedding videos within a survey. I thought it was really cool. We never published it, but we formed a group called, I don't know, Bonkian YouTubian researchers, Bonkian YouTubian researchers. And people like the really cool name, or it had a really nifty name. We got all these people joining my Facebook group and taking our survey and doing the research because we had something catchy. So here's the hikers of Boulder, Colorado. So if you're doing a research study of nature and the outdoors or fitness, you might contact the hikers of Boulder, Colorado, or some other research team and embed the link in that. Now, I've been a streak runner. I'm on day 1054 today. I have joined a group of streak runners, and there's some people running a marathon a day, and I plan to like embed a link for them to be interviewed for my next book. I joined this group with an intention of, contacting them later on. I'm just now reading their stories every day. I haven't contacted anyone since I joined it maybe 6 months ago, but I plan to someday. So form a research group or team, or a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group or whatever, WeChat group, or join one that exists. That's a way to get your sample. Study online class discussion like Sunmi is in my class last semester. Study something that is happening in the moment and manipulate it like she did role play, or study it in the past. Look at what already exists that's already collected in terms of an online class and analyze it that way. I already talked about this kind of looking at intact data, but online discussions today are extremely interesting and important. And then Sunmi's looking at that. Number 16, which is really number 18, I think I had, collect names and emails from an existing website. So like our study of MOOC instructors and now MOOC students, collect their names and their disciplines and their emails and all this. And then you can write to them. You can, I did a study 23 years ago of Merlot. Merlot's a website of sharing stuff online and peer evaluated Merlot. It's created in California. I have a friend who was the director. He was mad at me actually when we did the first study because he didn't know who I was. Then he sponsored it, which I forgot to mention. You should get sponsors sometimes. So one way to do research, I've had Wikipedia sponsor us for my Wikibook studies. I've had MIT OpenCourseWare with my studies with Dr. Lee down there in Houston. We had them sponsor and put in the newsletter for MIT OpenCourseWare. 180,000 people got sent the link to our survey at the end of the newsletter that went out to all the subscribers. And we got thousands of respondents because we thanked them. We asked them nicely, could you maybe put it in your monthly newsletter about the study we're doing of MIT OpenCourseWare? They said, yeah, it's a really great idea. Let's look at MIT OpenCourseWare. And then, the Wikibooks, Wikipedia, Wikiquote, Wikinews. This is all one foundation in San Francisco. The owner of Wikipedia dropped out of Indiana. He was a business student, a doctoral student in our finance program. Then he created Wikipedia with a guy, a philosophy major from Ohio State. The two of them started Wikipedia. I've presented with him at a conference. His name is Jimmy Wales. And I visited the headquarters with my son, and it's a very small place, Wikipedia. 10 people work at back in the day, 10 people in the Soma district, Sunmei, in the South of Market district of San Francisco. And well, thanks, Chris, for attending. I'm just about to the end. I'm at the last couple points here. So anyways, recruit somebody and get their sponsorship. We were able to collect info on Wikibookians and Wikipedians based on Wikipedia sponsorship, and they endorsed our study. That's very helpful. I'll finish up with the last one here. So collecting names from an existing website, scraping data. Machine learning lets you scrape data. So in MOOCs, there's like top 10 best MOOCs, the most commented MOOCs, the most whatever, there's lists. And often you can use machines, computers, to scrape all those comments and make sense of them. So one IST alum who's in Hong Kong now, his name is Timothy Kifong Hu. He's had an assistant scrape data on MOOCs, and he's had all sorts of publications on what makes MOOCs engaging. What makes those popular MOOCs engaging? Because he scraped all the data and lets the machine run the analysis of that data. Learning analytics, if you will. So I don't have number 18, 19, or 20, but those are, actually I had 18, 19, and 20 when you think about it, because I had double up ideas somewhere. But Karen and Paula, you're the only ones left in here. Can I ask you two questions to end tonight? Question one, are there any of those ideas in terms of collecting data that resonated with you?
For me, yeah. Well, I don't know if you said it tonight but I've heard it from you before, but looking at social media, maybe like Facebook or, getting data from there in groups. So I'm actually a member of a Facebook group for chemistry instructors. And I hadn't really thought of where I'm getting my data from yet, actually. But then that was an idea that occurred to me too, that, oh yeah, okay, I could probably think of how I can utilize that group, to get data.
Yeah, and we're doing now a study of ChatGPT and language learning, and we're looking at YouTubers who are talking about ChatGPT. And so, YouTube is really social media, right?
Yes.
So social media is probably one of the more popular ways to collect data today.
Right.
But it's not always successful. So you have to really think it through of where you're going and whatnot. And sometimes it's through connections, that they advise you, it's not this group, you need to join this group, it's, that way. Paula, did anything happen in your brain for you?
Yeah, contacting other people in the field.
Yeah, I emphasized that a number of times. So Paula and Karen and Sune, what am I missing? What didn't I say? Sune, you're muted.
I think that almost covers. I don't know right now.
There's got to be something I'm missing. Got to be something. Karen?
I can't think of something right now.
If you guys do, you can send me. I've looked at these books tonight. Read the How to Do Your Research Project, a guide for students, and The Craft of Research. I couldn't find any more ideas, but I tried. I tried looking through these. But in a couple of weeks, we'll have John Hitchcock again, and maybe we can talk to him in a few weeks now, and we'll have Vanessa Denon from Florida State in 3 weeks or so, and we can maybe talk to Vanessa about ways that she collects data. How does she get her sample? So remind me, Karen, Paul, and Sunmei, when we bring Dr. Hitchcock and Dr. Denon in, that we ask them about what are their sources of data and sensitivities for that data, what kind of things they have to be careful about in terms of their data sources and so forth. So I am going to call an end for Karen and Paula. I'm going to repeat a few things that weren't recorded for the students who missed tonight. So I'm going to briefly go through Cecil Smith's list with all of them, just so they don't miss some of the key points. And Sunmi, I'll give you a call after this, so you can go too, and I'll just call you on the phone and ask you, and we'll set up next week and all the one-to-one meetings. So thank you, Paula. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Sunmi. And
Thank
you guys
you
have,
very much.
have a great night. We'll see you next week.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And so if you weren't in the session tonight, and there were a lot of you, Dr. Cecil Smith has an article, Advice for New Faculty Members Getting Your Writing Program Started. There are a lot of PhD students who are missing, so I think this is important, especially for you, but EDD as well, anybody. So one thing that he talks about is getting a writing mentor or a guide who is going to be genuine and honest and direct and quick with feedback. Often they are honest and direct, but they're not quick. So make sure that you pick somebody that you can rely on to get you timely feedback on your writing and your ideas and so forth. But have someone you can confide in and will support you in the down days and the frustrating days and the rejection days. We all have those frustrations and rejections in our life. It's overcoming them that's important. The second thing he says is, if you form a research team, commit to a time and place for weekly and monthly meetings. Now, I kind of disagree with this one because I'm a kind of a free spirit a bit, and I kind of like my meeting days whenever. I don't like being preset to a particular time or place. I change it up. I like to have change in my life, but other people need to have that place to go on a Friday afternoon with their advisors and whatnot who are in the program, and we always meet in a certain place, and that works for some people. But at least form a team or teams that you're part of. And try not to be on too many people's teams so that you can have your own research agenda. And identify those people that you aspire to be like in terms of writing samples that you read, maybe writing to those people for their advice in terms of journals, in terms of topics, and so forth. So find a writing model as well as a mentor, and avoid that being lured into too many OPPs, other people's projects. Now in IST at IU, we have all the faculty doing projects and students joining those teams and so forth. That's good, but don't be on too many. You'll be overwhelmed, and you need to get in a cycle of self-directedness, not always following someone else's lead, but it has to be a bit of both. Some students take charge too much. They self-direct too much, and other students don't self-direct enough in terms of taking charge. Find that middle ground, that balance in your life. That maybe a one study where you're taking a lead, or two, one typically, like a dissertation or a dossier 2 research project or beyond. And then that's help from your friends or assistants. The second area he talks about is our organization. And organization includes trying to organize your time, like doing your teaching before you write, or doing your writing before you teach, whatever. Organize your time, organize your papers that you're working on in maybe a timeline on the wall, on some physical representation that you're putting up there that you can see you're making progress. He says have push pins on a bulletin board. Well, I don't use push pins on a bulletin board anymore, but I do have timelines, and I do have in my head what I'm working on. I have 6 calendars on my wall that I can look at what I'm planning to be working on in June, in May, in July. That's all lighting up. The screen is lit up here, but every once in a while my camera does that. Start small, have small weekly goals, and then try and meet those weekly goals early on in the week if possible, and then free up some time, whether you're freeing up time at winter break, at spring break, in the summertime. Find that chunking those times. And then take a look at journals. If you go to my website, curtbonk.com, and you click on web resources, you can click on journals in the field and then become familiar with those journals. Click on them, look at the format, look at the the word count, all these kinds of things. But even when it says 6,000 words, often they'll take 7,000 or 8,000. Some are really strict. Others are only strict in the first draft. And after they ask you to revise it in the second draft, you can have as many as you want. ETR&D says 7,500 words, but the editors tell me you can have a lot more than that. Ed Tech and Society has 6,000 or whatever it is, 7,000. They're very strict on the first round, but very open on the next round. So, you know, be familiar with the journals, talk to your advisor about the journals, or talk to other mentors or other people about the possible journals, and familiarize yourself with them. Think about your dissertation in publishable units. Some of you might have a figure or a model or a framework that's publishable. Others might have a table of data that you can elaborate on that's publishable, but segment things up. If I'm on your dissertation, I'll be reading and circling, oh, this is publishable. Then I'll circle, this is publishable, and I'll tell you that it is, typically, or I'll circle it and so forth. But you should be doing that as well, at some point anyhow. And then you might have to contact those more senior people in the field to get their advice about, is this model publishable, or where would I publish it? So making friends, as I said in the last section, getting to know other people in the field is really important for one's career. And then reaching out to those people and having a dialogue with them is critical to your growth and your learning in the field. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to send an email. Don't be afraid to be bold. Timothy Ferriss has a book called The 4-Day Work Week. And one of the key points in Timothy Ferriss's book is to be bold. I've been bold when I write a book, whatever, this isn't my book, but when I write a book, I often am bold in the endorsements on the back and at the front of the book who I asked to write an endorsement. And I get to know all these famous people. 30% say no, 70, 67% say yes, maybe 80. But, you know, typically there's some friends in there and some people I don't know. The same is true of everyone's career. You get to know people sometimes because of things you're working on, like a dissertation or a book or a grant project or something else. Think about multiple papers, again, from one project, from one study. You might have the model paper, the literature review paper, the research paper, or whatever, but don't plagiarize within. Don't use the same words or same data within multiple papers. And then build that niche, dig a hole, dig a niche, or dig, as you do study after study after study. And after a series of studies, then you can retrospect, reflect in your head on the field and where it's gone and where it's been and what you're doing and how you're contributing to the field. You see, your first one-off study, dossier 2, or before dossier 2, your pilot study, you're digging little ditches, but over time, over 5 years or 10 years or beyond, you're digging a lot more deeply, right? Let's see, that's part 2. In part 3, he talks about persistence plus priorities equals productivity. Persistence wins the day. Now, one of my advisors, who I'll have lunch with next week in my brother's in Fort Myers. I'm going to visit him in 2 weeks. I'm going down towards Naples. He lives in Naples. 2 of my advisors retired to the Naples area. I'm going to have lunch with both of them. And one of them, his name is Rich Lair. He moved from Madison, Wisconsin, where I had him as a professor, to Vanderbilt. And he became really famous in math education and technology. And he once said to me, I didn't realize early on that, you know, when reviewers send you all these comments, you're supposed to take the comments and revise the paper and resubmit. He said, ever since he decided to take those revising, you know, the editors and reviewers' comments and look at them as things to improve the paper, he's always had things published. I think he said at the time, I've never had anything rejected because he's always responded to the reviewer comments. Now, it's not 100%, but you increase your odds by not giving up, I guess, is the point there. And, you know, at some point, if you're rejected over and over again, now today we were rejected by a second journal, we're going to submit to a third journal for one paper. Yesterday or last week, we had a paper accepted and it came published, publishing came out, things, some things happen and some things get slowed down. And just if you have enough things going on in the general scheme of things, it's a yin and yang, it all balances out over time. So be willing to cut your losses at some point is the point there that Cecil's trying to make. Now, Cecil Smith, again, this is on this handout that I gave a few weeks ago. This says page 2, 10 years after. More tips on writing and publishing for doctoral students. I wrote this up in November 3rd, 2016, when I spoke to grad students at the University of Houston, main campus. Avoid doing too many conference presentations early. I've given this tip out before in here. I'm going to repeat it again. If you're jumping to conference to conference to conference, or jumping from grant to grant to grant, or jumping from one research team to another, you will never focus and get things done. So try to submit your article for publication before the conference is held. You'll improve your odds, you'll be in a better mindset, and all that kind of stuff. And then get a good laptop or tablet or writing device to produce this on. I have a Lenovo here. It had some quirks, it had some problems. I had someone fix some of the things that it had. It's pretty trustable. My old Sony Vaio was a great computer, but they don't make Sony Vaios anymore. So find something that's trustable that you can take with you to the airport concourse and cafes and the beach or wherever. Because every space, every place is a writing place, is your writing space, right? Don't feel guilty about saying no. And so I gave you that other tip sheet about 20 ways to say no, 20 things to say no to. You can't do everything. You can't make all service requests. I had a friend write me today, said, David, he says, could you help me write this paper on GBT chat, or chat GPT, whatever it is. I said, unfortunately, I can't help you with that paper. I just don't have time. I think it was a paper really about AI and other kinds of things. Yeah. Finally, money, it's a hit. He says, get grants, get funding, attend free workshops on writing and publishing, find ways to become more skilled and competent at writing and publishing through help and assistance, through professional development, through small grant funds, through technology and other initiatives. Those are some of Cecil's recommended ideas that he wrote up nearly 20 years ago for AERA and then got published like 6 years ago. It took him like 13 years to publish his initial ideas. I gave him help on this paper early on because he was a grad student colleague of mine, Dr. Cecil Smith, Cecil Smith, a former track star from the state of Kansas, like number 2 or 3 track star in the state of Kansas, whose friends became like the champion in track. Cecil Smith is the dean at Southern Illinois University down in Carbondale, I believe that is. And do see him at AERA if you go. I want to thank you all for attending part 2. If you have questions, please send me an email note. I hope you enjoyed week 5, part 2 of 795 and all the peripheral things that happen to you as a result. I will stop the recording now. Bye-bye.